Lethal Quiet by Joquan Da Hooligan. Chapter 1. The Jukebox King. Mid-2001 CE. In the southeast of the nation of Magni Maris 5. In the southwest of the province of Port-Doux. In the heart of the city of Springwells, where the neon signs buzzed like hungry insects and the streets held secrets in their shadows, there stood a tavern called Basecombe Sinai. It wasn't the fanciest establishment in Magni Maris 5, but it had something special, a jukebox that sang the songs of a dozen nations, and a man who kept it singing. He went by the name of Cable throughout the streets. His real moniker was only privy to a selected few. To the regulars at Basecombe Sinai, he was simply the programmer who could make any computer dance to his tune, and the patriot who could make any heart swell with pride when he spoke of the Southwest Province. Every evening, after the sun dipped below the industrial skyline, Cable would push through the tavern's heavy wooden doors, his pockets jingling with coins like a mechanical symphony. "What's going on, Cable?" the bartender would call out, already reaching for the man's usual, a simple ale, nothing fancy. Cable never spent much on drinks. His money had a different purpose. The jukebox stood in the corner like a glowing shrine, its chrome surfaces reflecting the warm amber light of the tavern. It was an old model, the kind that still took real coins, and Cable fed it like a faithful worshiper tending to his deity. Quarter after quarter, song after song, he would fill the tavern with music that spoke of home, of love, of dreams that still danced despite the hard times that had fallen over the city of Springwells. The other patrons would watch him with knowing smiles. There was something almost magical about watching Cable at work, not at his computer, but at his true craft of curating the night's soundtrack. He knew exactly which song would make the old-timers remember their youth, which melody would make the community laborers forget about their troubles at the factory, which rhythm would make the whole tavern feel like family. But the real magic happened late in the evening, when most of the crowd had thinned and only the regulars remained. That's when Cable would walk to the payphone in the corner, an antique even by tavern standards, and make a call that everyone anticipated. "My honey bear," he would say, his voice carrying just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Would you honor me with a dance?" Within minutes, she would appear, Cable's wife, a woman whose grace seemed to defy the harsh realities of their industrial city. She would glide through the tavern doors as if she were entering a ballroom, and Cable would feed the jukebox one final time, selecting the perfect samba to end the night. "Ladies and gentlemen," the bartender would announce with theatrical flair, "it's time for Cable's coin samba." And then they would dance. In that cramped tavern, surrounded by the smell of ale and the chatter of working folk, Cable and his wife would transform the space into something beautiful. Their feet would find the rhythm. Their bodies would tell the story of love that endures, and for those precious minutes, everyone in Basecombe Sinai would remember that there was still beauty in the world. But lately, the songs had grown fewer. The economic storm clouds that had gathered over Springwells were no longer just threatening. They had opened up and poured hardship on everyone below. The Azurite private military company called Balm Sonic Casque had moved into the industrial district, and with them came new rules, new taxes, new fears. Money that once jingled in Cable's pocket now went to keeping food on the table and lights in the windows. The jukebox stood silent more often now, its colorful lights dimmed like the hopes of the city's resident. Cable would still come to the tavern, still order his simple ale, but his pockets no longer sang their mechanical song. The regulars would glance at the quiet jukebox and then at Cable, understanding passing between them without words. "Hard times don't last forever," Cable would say when someone mentioned the music's absence, his programmer's logic mixing with his patriot's hope. "But good people do. And when this storm passes, and it will pass, we'll fill this place with music again. You'll see." He didn't know it yet, but vibrance was returning to the city of Springwells, the kind of vibrance that arrives not with fanfare, but with quiet footsteps in the night, from the kind of change that would soon make even the quietest among them very dangerous indeed. For now, though, Cable sat with his ale, watching his beloved jukebox stand silent, waiting for the day when quarters would flow like water and the Samba would return to Basecombe Sinuli. Little did he know that help was already on the way, in the form of a private military contractor called the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. Omar Sullivan, a representative of the Count Flo Assembly, Jasper Protectors of the city of Springwells, was instructed by leadership of his organization to begin hiring private military companies to assist in their grievance against the Balm Sonic Casque, a Azurite PMC of vast numbers who had recently been hired to destabilize economic activities in their city by unknown entities. One of his final conversations with many PMCs this day was with Buzz Bloomer of the JDH Corporation based in Finkel Acres. Fortunately enough for Omar Sullivan, he didn't have to travel all the way to the northern part of the province to get in contact with the JDH. They had a long-established outpost in the city of Springwells near Livernois. Furthermore, Omar already had a relationship established with Lieutenant Bloomer, having hired the JDH previously in Azurite altercations of the past, across town, in a concrete building that bore the modest sign JDH Springwells Outpost. Omar Sullivan wiped the sweat from his brow as he approached his final meeting of a very long day. The CFA representative had spent the morning and afternoon moving from one mercenary outfit to another, his pockets growing lighter with each deposit paid, his notebook growing heavier with each promise of support. The Balm Sonic Casque occupation had turned their once thriving industrial city into a strangled shadow of itself. What had begun as economic pressure had become something far more sinister, a systematic dismantling of everything that made Springwells worth defending. Omar knew that the Count Flo Assembly's regular enforcers, good as they were, simply didn't have the numbers to push back against such a well-funded and organized Azurite force. Lieutenant Buzz Bloomer met him at the door, his weathered face creasing into a familiar smile. Over the Wyclin, the two men had developed a strong appreciation for one another. Sometimes the problems in Springwells were smaller and the solutions simpler. "Omar," Buzz said, extending a firm handshake, "I heard you've been making the rounds today. This Balm Sonic situation must be worse than the reports suggested." "Worse than bad," Omar replied, following Buzz into a small office dominated by maps and communication equipment. "They're not just occupying territory, Buzz. They're systematically choking the life out of this place. Small businesses folding, families leaving, infrastructure crumbling. If we don't act soon, there won't be a Springwells left to save. What we know so far is that the BSC is a private military company, thousands upon thousands of soldiers. We're not sure who hired them, but we're clear of their end game, destabilizing the region, perhaps to bring down real estate prices. We guess that some in the Azurite party want to buy up our factories for cheap so they can begin manufacturing armaments to distribute throughout the nation from here." Buzz poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that had clearly been brewing too long, but Omar accepted it gratefully. The lieutenant studied a tactical map on his desk, marked with red pins where Balm Sonic had established positions. "The Count Flo Assembly is ready to pay standard rates plus a 20% premium," Omar continued. "We're not asking for charity here, Buzz. This is legitimate contract work, and Jasper has significant interest in keeping Springwells stable." "I don't doubt that," Buzz replied, leaning back in his chair. "And under normal circumstances, I'd have my boys suited up and ready to roll out within the hour. But this isn't normal circumstances, Omar. What you're describing the scope of this Balm Sonic occupation, it's bigger than what we can handle with our current Springwells complement." Omar's heart sank slightly. "How much bigger?" "We've got maybe 2,000 experienced operatives stationed here," Buzz said, tapping the map. "Good soldiers, don't get me wrong, but Balm Sonic's got thousands upon thousands of new Azurite boots on the ground, plus heavy equipment, plus whatever reinforcements they can call in from other Azurite contractors." He looked up from the map, meeting Omar's eyes directly. "Of course, we wouldn't be outclassed by this new threat, but we would most definitely be outnumbered." "So that's it then?" Omar asked, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. "I didn't say that. Buzz replied with a slight grin. What I said was, we can't handle it with our current complement. The Balm Sonic Casque has a significant amount of boots on the ground, which indicates the seriousness of the intentions of whoever hired them. In order to match in seriousness with our contribution to the forces you're gathering, I would have to call in for backup from the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation headquarters in Finkel Acres. So you're going to the top? Omar Sullivan asked. That's right, Omar, Buzz replied. I'm going to the top. I'll have to get in contact with my superiors, either Hank Voss Sr. or Doyon Pops Rand Sr., to explain the gravity of the situation. I'm sure they've already got eyes on the networks now. Pops has 3 sons in the corporation that just love any excuse to come to the Southwest. If he sends those boys, the Azurites are in for serious pounding. But first, I have to send in my assessment. And you think he'll accept the contract? I'm already typing out the memo now. Omar felt a flicker of hope. And you think he'll approve it? Buzz was already dialing the secure line. Omar, my friend, you just said the magic words. Jasper has significant interest in Springwells. Pops Rand doesn't just run a military company. He runs a business. And business has been good lately precisely because we understand which way the political winds are blowing. As the connection crackled to life, Buzz gave Omar a confident nod. Let me put it to you this way. If Pops Rand decides to take this contract, Balm Sonic Casque is going to find out very quickly that they picked the wrong city to occupy. Omar settled back in his chair, cradling the bitter coffee and allowing himself a moment of optimism. He spent the last few hours making busy of the day and looked forward to giving his own superiors a positive report. Outside, the sun was setting over a city under siege. But inside this small outpost office, the wheels of liberation were beginning to turn. Chapter 2. The Call to Arms. In the city of Finkel Acres, in northern Port-Doe province, at the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation headquarters, Pops called for an intelligence briefing at the off-duty recreation center known as the Garage for immediate deployment to the city of Springwells. I just got off the line with Lieutenant Buzz Bloomer. The assembled staff members cheered in anticipation. They knew well what was going on in the Southwest province and were looking forward to assisting their comrades in Springwells as Pops raised a hand to silence the rabble. Bloomer's assessment. Pop's voice carried the authority of a man who had built an empire from careful decisions and decisive action, paints the situation in Springwells vividly. Balm Sonic Casque isn't just occupying, they're systematically dismantling Jasper infrastructure. That tells me someone with deep pockets and long-term strategy hired them. The Count Flow Assembly has sent a representative named Omar Sullivan to make contact with Buzz. They're offering standard rates plus 20% premium for immediate deployment. 20%? Lieutenant Al Flint called out. That ought to get you enough money to buy booze and solicit whores, you gaggle of hooligans, eliciting a chorus of laughter. Pops chuckled as he once again lifted his hand for silence. The CFA have been the primary Jasper defenders in Springwells for many Wyclin. The fact that they're calling out for external military contractors shows the weight of the severity in the Southwest. Unfortunately, our friends are desperate, but that's good. Desperate clients pay on time and don't quibble over equipment costs. Another pause. Chucky Hoy raised a hand. So what's our game plan, Pops? I'm authorizing full deployment. 5,000 additional operatives will join the brothers at the JDH outpost in Springwells, plus mechanized support. You boys are familiar with the rhythm. Once again, we dance to the beat of the war drum. Chucky Hoy's eyes widened. 5,000 additional troops would more than triple the JDH presence in Springwells. Pops, are you sending the boys? Some of them, Lieutenant Doyon Getofinger Rand, my son, will lead the deployment. Pops confirmed, along with Al Flint, Wayne Blake Speeden, and Tyler J. Voss. Tazakai and Mazakor can monitor the situation with us in the chamber tent building. Can't we monitor from here in the garage? Tazakai asked his father. Why? So you can get drunk and smoke weed all day. Mazakor nudged his older brother Tazakai with his elbow and jokingly said, but I was going to go to Tachi Station to pick up some power converters. The primary force will deploy via the IRT system, Pops explained. 17 minutes from Finkel Acres to Springwells Central Station if the rails are clear. The heavy equipment and vehicle convoy will take the highways about 2.5 hours. Tyler J. Voss, his mind already racing with coordination details. The Count Flow Assembly will most likely establish their primary staging area at Patton Park on Woodmere Road. Buzz will have hundreds of our own operatives there, plus the other PMCs. The Count Flow Assembly contracted today. Perfect, Pops replied. Once you arrive, have Buzz make sure Getofinger gets introduced to Omar Sullivan properly. Doyon Getofinger Rand handed his wife, Quetta Acquaseas Rand, his half-eaten bacon cheeseburger from F.A. Coney Island on Livernois as he rose to address the assembly. You all know I got love for the Southwest. They keep the coffers of this organization well fed. If the Count Flow Assembly themselves are hiring us, that means it's real in the field out there. Most of the time, it's the other way around. As far as I'm concerned, we owe the CFA a debt of gratitude. Since we don't have time to stop at Hallmark and get them a nice card, looks like our boot to some Azurite ass will have to serve as a proper thank you. Put your fucking game faces on, gentlemen. It's time to roll out. As the JDH made their way across the province, another conversation was taking place in the familiar warmth of Basecombe Sinuli. Cable sat nursing his usual ale when a man in CFA colors approached his table. Are you the programmer that called for us? The man asked. Cable looked up cautiously. In times like these, you had to make certain that the person you summoned is the person who arrived. The usual patrons at the Basecombe Sinuli bar weren't coming in as often as they used to due to hard economic times. More than often, strangers, unfamiliar faces would come in, sometimes causing trouble. I'm a programmer with Map Quanjasonic Tech, Cable said, introducing himself. We're a small software startup with offices downtown. We primarily write code for digital music players, but we specialize in basic input-output systems, optimizing the back-end processes to ensure everything runs smooth under the hood. Our real expertise is in low-level system architecture and network protocols. Essentially, we write the algorithms that make the data flow where it needs to go quickly and without any hiccups. Name's Rodriguez, Count Flow Assembly, Tech Division. We understand you could be of assistance in technical matters. Cable gestured to the empty chair across from him. Rodriguez sat down and lowered his voice. We know you've got skills with computer systems. What we need to know is, can those skills reach beyond just making machines work? Can they make enemy machines not work? Cable leaned in slightly, his tone shifting from casual to businesslike. When you're up against an enemy that's leveraging advanced communications to stay one step ahead, you need someone who can break down their infrastructure and find the weak points. I can get into their systems, trace their signals, and disrupt their communications without them ever knowing I was there. Clean, fast, and invisible. For the first time in weeks, Rodriguez smiled. You're talking about the Balm Sonic Casque communication networks. You know about their systems? Friend, I've been watching their deployment since day one. They've got a decent setup, but it's got vulnerabilities. Military-grade encryption, but they're using civilian infrastructure to carry their signals. I've been thinking. Cable took a long drink of his ale. I could write something that would make their coordination very difficult. Rodriguez leaned forward. What kind of difficult? The kind where their field commanders can't talk to each other, their supply requests get lost, and their reinforcement calls end up routing to pizza delivery services instead of headquarters. Can you do it? Cable looked around the Basecombe Sinuli, his tavern, where music used to fill the air and people used to dance, where his wife used to glide across the floor like an angel. The Azurite occupation had stolen that from him, from all of them. Give me access to a terminal in 2 hours, Cable said quietly. I'll give you something that'll make Balm Sonic Casque wish they'd never heard of Springwells. The massive Springwells Central IRT station hummed with activity as the first wave of JDH reinforcements arrived. The transit hub stretched across numerous city blocks, its soaring glass and steel architecture designed to handle thousands of passengers during peak hours. JDH squad leader Doyan Getofinger Rand stepped off the lead car, his sharp eyes immediately assessing the tactical situation. Behind him, Al Flint, Wayne Blake Speeden, and Tyler J. Voss organized the rapid deployment of personnel and equipment. The precision was remarkable. Within minutes, they set up a temporary staging point along the Verner Highway service drive. Buzz Bloomer was waiting for them with Omar Sullivan, who looked both impressed and slightly overwhelmed by the speed and scale of the JDH deployment. Getofinger, Buzz called out, using the informal address that indicated both familiarity and respect. "This is Omar Sullivan, our CFA liaison." The younger Rand stepped forward, extending his hand with the same direct manner his father was known for. "Mr. Sullivan, I understand Balm Sonic Casque has come to piss in your pool. We're here to close down that particular water park." "The staging area is at Patton Park," Omar explained. "We've got coordination centers set up, with intelligence coming in from multiple sources." Getofinger smiled. "Very good. The rest of my boys will be here within a couple of hours." "Don't you worry about a thing, Mr. Sullivan. I've already had some of Buzz's troops set out for intelligence gathering. If the streets are talking, my boys are familiar with the language and will give it a warm ear." "Ghetto," Tyler J. Voss interrupted, approaching with a tablet displaying real-time intelligence feeds. "I've got intel on the Chamberlain Steel gang, street-level Azurite faction, but they're not happy with BSC's methods." Getofinger lit a cigar. "Azurites never play well together. That's what makes our job so easy. Balm Sonic Casque came in without going through proper political channels," Voss explained. "Chamberlain Steel sees it as disrespect. They're willing to provide intelligence on Alfred Sturm Elibus and his operation structure." "Enemy of my enemy," Al Flint murmured. "Exactly," Getofinger said. "Coordinate with them. Any intelligence on BSC leadership and positioning will help us end this quickly." As the JDH forces moved out toward Patton Park, radio chatter filled the airwaves with news that would soon affect the region. "Breaking news this hour, Azurite 219 MM5 Southeast Division has announced the arrest and planned deportation of foreign national Elaine Dwe-Ad, publisher of several independent documentary films. Dale Winhe of the 219th confirmed that Miss Ad was detained for lack of proper documentation." Getofinger glanced at the radio, then at Omar. Inhaling deeply through his nostrils, Getofinger said, "The waters in the pool are auspiciously yellow today. All the more reason to hit BSC hard and fast before they can coordinate with other faction operations." The convoy moved through Springwells toward Patton Park, where thousands of Allied forces were preparing for what would either be liberation or the beginning of a much larger fray. At a Count Flow Assembly Communications Center, Cable worked at a borrowed laptop, his fingers dancing across keys like they once fed quarters to the jukebox, crafting digital chaos for the enemy who had stolen his city's music. The stage was set. The players were in position, and in the streets of Springwells, the quiet revolution was about to begin. Chapter 3. The Storm Breaks. Alfred Sturm Elibas, leader of Balm Sonic Casque, stood on the reinforced balcony of his command post in the Woodmere district, watching the southwestern portion of Springwells burn with the fires of war. What had begun as a methodical occupation was rapidly becoming something else entirely, a full-scale battle that threatened to consume everything he had established in Springwells so far. Through his tactical binoculars, he could see the coordinated movements of multiple Jasper-aligned private military companies converging on his positions. The Count Flow Assembly had done their homework, bringing in forces from across the province to challenge Balm Sonic Casque's hold on the industrial city. But it was one particular arrival that sent a chill down his spine: the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. Alfred lowered his binoculars and closed his eyes for a moment, recalling words that had haunted Azurite leadership for decades. Ancient prophecy spoke of warriors who would rise in defense of Jasper interests, individuals whose names would become legend among both allies and enemies. He had hoped those were merely stories told to frighten young Azurite recruits. 20 Wyclin ago, he had been a junior officer when reports came in about the defeat of the Morel Sky Naval Fleet, a significant portion of this Azurite aquatic force, reduced to burning wreckage in the span of 3 hours. The official reports had been classified, but whispers in the ranks spoke of two A-100 primes, Getofinger and his half-sister, working in perfect coordination to dismantle what had been considered an impregnable naval force. Now that same name was being reported by his field commanders, and Alfred could feel the tide of battle shifting beneath his feet. "Sir." A communications officer burst into the command center, his face pale with frustration. "We're experiencing massive system failures across all networks. Orders aren't reaching field units, supply coordinates are being scrambled, and half our reinforcement requests are being routed to civilian businesses." Alfred spun around. "What do you mean, civilian businesses?" "Sir, 3 separate urgent requests for ammunition resupply have been answered by a pizza delivery service, a flower shop, and something called Dirty Dan's Discount Mattresses. Our encrypted channels are somehow being intercepted and rerouted." The implications hit Alfred immediately. This wasn't random technical failure. This was sabotage. Someone with considerable skill had penetrated their communication networks and was systematically dismantling their coordination capabilities. In modern warfare, an army without communication was little more than an armed mob. Before he could respond, his personal phone rang, the secure line that only a handful of people had access to. The caller ID was blocked, but Alfred recognized the significance. Only one person would be calling him on this line during active combat. "Senator," Alfred answered, keeping his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. "Alfred." The voice on the other end was smooth, cultured, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to moving pieces on a much larger board than this single battle. "I trust the operation in Springwells is proceeding according to plan?" Alfred looked out at the smoke rising from multiple points across the city, listened to the distant sound of gunfire and explosions, and made a calculated decision. "The situation is well in hand, Senator. We're encountering some expected resistance, but nothing that will prevent us from achieving our objectives." "Good to hear. I want to remind you of the strategic importance of Springwells' location near the waterfront. Control of that industrial infrastructure will give us a significant advantage in manufacturing and distribution throughout the region. The party has invested considerable resources in this operation." "Of course, Senator. We understand the stakes." "Good. And Alfred, I have some encouraging news from other fronts. We've begun systematically addressing those troublesome voices that have been speaking against our interests. The 219th Division has detained that documentary filmmaker Elaine Dwead, the stoner that produces those inflammatory films about freedom and resistance. Sometimes the most effective battle is fought not with bullets, but with silence." The line went quiet for a moment, and Alfred could hear the weight of unspoken expectations. "I trust you'll have Springwells secured within the next 12 hours, the senator continued. "The party's patience has limits, and there are other contractors who might be more efficient if the current arrangement proves inadequate." The threat was clear. "Understood, Senator. Springwells will be ours." After the call ended, Alfred stared at the phone for a long moment. The senator's confidence in their success was based on incomplete information, and maintaining that illusion was becoming increasingly difficult. But admitting failure to Azurite leadership was often a fatal mistake. "Sir." Another officer approached with a tablet displaying real-time battlefield reports. "We're getting detailed intelligence on the Javhan Dominion Holdings forces. It's not good news." Alfred scrolled through the reports, his expression growing darker with each entry. Getofinger Rand was living up to his reputation. BSC positions that had taken weeks to establish were being overrun in hours. Supply lines were being severed with surgical precision. Most disturbing of all, several of his most experienced unit commanders had simply disappeared, just gone, as if they had never existed. The reports painted a picture of an enemy who understood not just tactics, but the deeper currents of warfare itself. This wasn't the fumbling resistance of local militias. This was professional military action at the highest level. Alfred set down the tablet and reached for his combat gear. His officers looked at him with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Sir, you're not thinking of going into the field yourself?" his second-in-command asked. "There's a A-100 Prime out there wreaking havoc on our rank and file. It's my duty as a 100 to go out and face him myself. Sometimes," Alfred replied, checking his weapon and securing his armor. "When you want something done properly, you have to handle it personally. Getofinger may have a reputation, but reputations are built on past victories. Today, we write a different story." He moved toward the door, then paused and turned back to his communications officer. "And find out who's sabotaging our networks. I want that problem solved within the hour, or I'll find someone who can solve it." As Alfred Sturm Elibas prepared to enter the battle personally, the sounds of warfare grew closer to his command post. In the distance, he could hear the distinctive tactical coordination that marked professional military operations. The JDH forces were advancing with the kind of precision that only came from extensive training and absolute confidence in victory. The prophecies might be true, Alfred thought as he stepped into the war-torn streets of Springwells. But prophecies, like reputations, were just words until someone proved them with blood and steel. The battle for Springwells was about to become very personal indeed. At the JDH headquarters in the city of Finkel Acres on the 10th floor of the Chamber Tent Center, Doyon Pops Rand Sr. stood in front of multiple display screens. His daughter-in-law, Quetta Acquaseas Rand, stood next to him, observing the Battle of Springwells in real time. Senior communications expert, Berkere Kibbe, sat at his usual station with Doyon Mazikor Rand standing next to him on a private video conference with an informant from Chamberlain Steel, marking strategic locations on his tactical pad to feed in to his father's monitor, feed to relay orders. "What the hell is that?" Berkere Kibbe said to himself while staring at one of his monitors. "What you got, Kibbe?" Mazikor asked, turning his attention to the screen. "I'm reading some sort of malware attack." "What?" Mazikor replied. "Not on us. On the Balm Sonic Casque networks. None of our operatives have alerted me to a malware attack. And it doesn't seem to be coming from any of the other military networks out there." Mazikor snapped his fingers in recognition. "What is it, Maz?" Kibbe questioned. Mazikor took a second to bask in the moment, eager to partake in what was known throughout the area as JDH Dickery. "It's like entertainment." "Entertainment?" Kibbe questioned. "Yeah. To be charmed or amused." "Amused." "News. News is broadcasted on television." "Television. Smell. Ovision. Smell. Smell comes from farts, like a member of a live studio audience would do. Audiences heckle comedians, which causes unrest. Civil unrest. It's a civilian hacker, grinning to himself. He did it. He got the attention of everyone in the room. "Thank you. I'll be here all night. You'll be in the goddamn mess hall on KP all night if you keep it up," his father replied pointedly. "Y'all didn't see that South Park episode where they was making fun of Jeff?" "Never mind," Mazikor said. "The malware attack is obviously coming from a civilian hacker. Somebody in Springwells is not pleased with the current company." "Well, why didn't you just say that?" Quetta Acquaseas Rand asked her younger brother-in-law. "And miss out on this golden moment? No fucking way." Chucky Hoy interjected. "Maz, you're at about a 10 right now. We need you to turn that shit down." "Hear, hear," Tazakai replied. Just then, young Sergeant Reginald Cruz stepped in. "Excuse me, Pops, you got a Curtis Shepard online too." Pops picked up the phone. "Hey, Shep, what's going on?" "Yeah, it's still happening. This weekend, Falcon Flint's gonna be on the grill. That boy knows his way around a pig. As Pop's phone call continued, Acquaseas noticed a story of interest on one of the adjacent television screens. "Hoy, turn that up," she requested. It was continuing news coverage about the foreign national independent film documentary producer Elaine Dwead, who had been recently detained by 219th Azurite forces. Goddamn stoner chick. Azzies might have actually did something right, Chucky Hoyi said out loud, receiving an instant glare from Tazakai. "It's not about an illegal alien that overstayed her welcome," Acquaseas said. "It's about stifling the message. She produces films for the underprivileged working class, people that a lot of Azurite companies hire, overwork, and underpay. By sending her back to Britannia, they eliminate the threat of that message being heard. It might be something that we ought to look into ourselves, seeing that the 219th is involved." As the conversation simmered, the hum of activity in the room became a dull backdrop to the distant echoes of battle, still raging in Springwells. The monitors flashed real-time reports of the chaos, but it was the story on the television screen that held Acquaseas' attention. If the 219th Azurite forces are involved, it could be more than just a standoff. Pops hung up the phone, a grim expression crossing his face. His eyes lingered on the map, then shifted to the flickering feed of the distant city. Springwells is still burning, and now we've got the 219th playing their part. That's not a coincidence. The room fell silent as the weight of the news settled in, an uneasy tension hanging in the air. The fight for Springwells wasn't just about a city anymore. It was about something much larger and darker, brewing just beneath the surface. Chapter 4. Checkmate. The Balm Sonic Casque command center buzzed with frantic activity as technicians desperately tried to restore order to their communications network. Colonel Titus Lunson, Alfred's second in command, paced between workstations like a caged predator, his frustration mounting with each failed attempt to regain control. "Status report." Lunson barked at the head communications officer. "Sir, we're still unable to identify the source of the disruptions," Sergeant Williams replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "The malware, sophisticated, is not just jamming our frequencies, it's actively redirecting our transmissions. Our supply requests are going to flower shops, our tactical updates are being sent to pizza parlors, and somehow our encrypted battle plans ended up at a veterinary clinic." Lunson slammed his fist against a nearby console. "How are the Jasper forces anticipating our every move? They're hitting positions before we can even finish establishing them." Before Williams could respond, a young corporal burst through the command center entrance, holding a folded piece of paper. "Sir, this was left at checkpoint 7. The guards found it pinned to the gate." Lunson snatched the note and unfolded it. His face darkened as he read the message aloud. "Perhaps next time you should check in before moving your luggage into one of our rooms. Signed, Chamberlain Steele." The implications hit the room like a physical blow. Chamberlain Steele, the local Azurite street gang that was supposed to be their ally, had betrayed them. The intelligence leaks, the perfectly timed attacks, the knowledge of BSC positions, it all made sense now. Those backstabbing Lunson started, but was interrupted by urgent radio chatter from the field. "Command, this is Delta 7. We have eyes on Alfred Sturm Elibas. He's engaged with JDH forces in Sector 4. Multiple hostiles, including the target designation Getofinger." Lunson grabbed the radio. "Delta 7, provide support to Commander Elibas immediately." "Negative, Command. We're pinned down by sniper fire. Cannot reach his position." In the war-torn streets of the Woodmere district, Alfred Sturm Elibas moved through the smoke and debris with the practiced grace of a seasoned warrior. His combat armor bore the scars of the day's fighting, but his resolve remained unshaken. The sounds of battle echoed from every direction, the sharp crack of rifle fire, the deeper boom of explosives, the distant rumble of armored vehicles. He rounded a corner and found himself face to face with his quarry. Javhan Getofinger Rand stood amid the wreckage of what had once been a residential street, his tactical gear splattered with the evidence of close combat. Around him, Al Flint, Wayne Blake Speeden, and Tyler J. Voss maintained defensive positions, their weapons trained on potential threats. The JDH operatives moved with the fluid coordination that had made them legendary among both allies and enemies. "So," Alfred called out, his voice carrying clearly across the debris-strewn ground, the famous Getofinger. 20 Wyclin ago, you and your sister turned the Morel Sky Fleet into burning scrap metal. Today, you've dismantled weeks of careful positioning in a matter of hours. I have to admit, the reputation is well earned." Getofinger's response was characteristically direct. "Alfred Sturm Elibus, I've read your file. Competent tactical mind, solid field experience, unfortunate choice in employers. This doesn't have to end badly for you personally." Actually, it does. Alfred drew his sidearm with lightning speed, but Getofinger was already moving. The battle that followed was unlike anything the watching JDH operatives had witnessed. Both men were A-100 designation warriors whose skills transcended normal human limitations. They moved with supernatural speed and precision, their combat flowing like a deadly dance choreographed by violence itself. Alfred's shots were perfectly placed, but Getofinger seemed to anticipate each one, weaving between bullets with impossible grace. In return, Getofinger's attacks came with the force of a sledgehammer, each strike capable of shattering concrete or crushing steel. The fight raged across the battlefield, destroying everything in its path. Abandoned vehicles became weapons. Chunks of rubble became projectiles, and the very street beneath their feet cracked under the impact of their blows. Tyler J. Voss, attempting to provide supporting fire, stepped into the wrong position at the wrong moment. Alfred's combat blade, deflected by one of Getofinger's blocks, carved a deep gash across Tyler's shoulder and chest. The young operative went down hard, his weapon skittering across the pavement. The sight of his wounded comrade triggered something primal in Getofinger. His tactical discipline gave way to pure, focused rage. He spotted a neighborhood watch sign mounted on a nearby street corner, a cheerful reminder of simpler times when the biggest threat was petty theft or vandalism. With a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the surrounding buildings, Getofinger ripped the metal sign from its mounting. The thick steel post came free in a shower of concrete fragments, transforming into an improvised but devastating weapon. Alfred raised his rifle, but it was too late. The signpost caught him across the chest with bone-crushing force, sending him flying backward into a pile of rubble. He tried to rise, tried to bring his weapon to bear, but Getofinger was already upon him. What followed was swift and brutal. The neighborhood watch sign, with its quaint message about community safety, became an instrument of final justice. When the violence ended, Alfred Sturm Elibas lay motionless among the debris, his ambitions for Springwells dying with him. Getofinger picked up his field radio, his voice carrying the calm authority of absolute victory. The transmission went out on all frequencies, reaching every BSC operative still fighting in the city. "Attention, Balm Sonic Casque forces. This is Doyon Getofinger Rand, Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. I am now standing over the corpse of your leader. Checkmate." The effect was immediate. Across the battlefield, BSC resistance began to crumble. Without their charismatic leader and with their communications in chaos, the fight went out of them like air from a punctured tire. Back at the BSC command bunker, Colonel Lunson listened to the transmission with growing horror. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity before he finally reached for his own radio. All units, this is command. Execute immediate tactical withdrawal. Fall back to secondary positions and await further orders." It was over. The occupation of Springwells had failed, and continuing to fight would only result in needless casualties. Lunson began the difficult process of coordinating a strategic retreat, knowing that his career and quite possibly his life would be forfeit when the Azurite leadership learned of their defeat. As the sounds of battle faded from the streets of Springwells, a different kind of victory was being celebrated in a small tavern in the heart of the city. Cable pushed through the doors of Basecombe Sinai, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder, and something approaching a smile on his weathered face. Rodriguez from the Count Flo assembly was waiting for him at a corner table, a manila envelope resting beside his untouched beer. The CFA tech officer stood as Cable approached, extending his hand in genuine gratitude. "Cable," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the relief of a man who had watched impossible odds turn in their favor. "What you did today disrupting their entire communication network, it saved lives. Probably saved a whole damn city." Cable accepted the envelope, feeling the weight of bills inside. For weeks, the harsh economic times brought on by the Azurite occupation had meant choosing between feeding his family and feeding the jukebox. The choice had been obvious, but painful. Now, for the first time since Balm Sonic Casque had strangled the life out of Springwells, he had money that wasn't earmarked for survival. Just did what needed doing. Cable replied, but his eyes were already drifting toward the silent jukebox in the corner. Those Azurite bastards took more than just jobs and businesses. They took the music out of this place. Rodriguez followed his gaze and understood immediately. Well, looks like it's time to bring it back. Cable walked to the bar where the bartender was already reaching beneath the register, anticipating what was needed. The familiar exchange of bills for quarters felt like a ritual of restoration, each coin a small act of rebellion against the occupation that had tried to silence their joy. "Give me $20 in quarters," Cable said, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of emotion. The bartender's hands moved with practiced efficiency, counting out the coins with the reverence of someone handling sacred objects. "Been waiting for this day," he murmured, sliding the quarters across the polished wood surface. Cable scooped up the coins, their weight familiar in his palms, their metallic song ringing out as they settled into his pockets. For the first time in weeks, his pockets jingled with the familiar sound of music waiting to be born. The jukebox stood in the corner like a faithful friend ready to resume its song, its chrome surfaces reflecting the warm amber light of the tavern. Cable approached it with the solemnity of a worshiper returning to a shrine after a long exile. Quarter after quarter, he fed the machine, selecting songs that spoke of liberation, of hope, of dreams that refused to die even in the darkest times. The tavern began to fill with music once again, not the harsh sounds of war, but the gentler rhythms of life returning to normal. Then, as the sun began to set over a city finally free from occupation, Cable walked to the old payphone in the corner and made the call everyone had been waiting to hear. "My honey bear," he said, his voice carrying the joy of a man whose world had been restored. "Would you honor me with a dance?" Within minutes, she appeared, Cable's wife, graceful as ever, gliding through the tavern doors as if she were entering a ballroom. Cable fed the jukebox one final time, selecting the perfect samba to celebrate not just their love, but their city's freedom. "Ladies and gentlemen," the bartender announced with theatrical flair, his voice cracking with emotion, "it's time for Cable's Coin Samba." And as the music filled the air and the couple began to dance, everyone in Basecombe Singuli understood that some things, love, hope, and the simple joy of community, were stronger than any army, more enduring than any occupation. The revolution had indeed been quiet, fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with code and courage, with loyalty and love. Cable didn't talk much with the other patrons, nor his wife for that matter, about his work at Mapquanja Sonic Tech. He wouldn't make much mention about his involvement on the malware attacks against the Balm Sonic Casque. The silent jukebox at the Basecombe Sinuli bar no longer stood as mute testimony to the Azurite occupation in the city of Springwells. The quiet now returned to Cable. He will remain quiet about his involvement in this conflict. Jasper forces were still clueless to who performed the malware attack. Not a word would be uttered identifying Cable and his involvement. After the loudness of explosions and gunfire throughout the city of Springwells, it was the quiet that would play the large part in bringing forth victory. A lethal quiet, and in the end, it was the quiet ones who had proven most dangerous of all. Chapter 5. Everybody's a Critic. Before Javhan Dominion Holdings signed its Articles of Incorporation in 1989, the area that serves as its headquarters now was just a simple apartment building owned by Doyon Pops Rand Sr. before the area surrounding that apartment building became the four-city block complex that functioned as the primary base of operations for the JDH. Pops installed a firing range in the basement of that apartment building. It was there his sons would hone their shooting techniques. The building still serves as housing for a lot of Rand family members till this day, though it has undergone significant upgrades since then. But that firing range is still in the basement. In the basement, Doyon Tazakai Rand and his youngest brother Doyon Diggy Rand are having a shooting contest. Getofinger and his wife Acquaseas are observing their brothers while dining on their favorite meal. Cheeseburgers, chili fries with cheese, and milkshakes from F.A. Coney Island on Livernois. Pops walks in to observe the scrimmage and maybe even place a bet or two as he observes his son and daughter-in-law eating what he refers to as shit on a shingle. We've got 5 fully functional kitchens at this facility, and you two continue to eat that shit on a shingle. It's all in the marketing, Pops. Getofinger replies with a sly grin as Pops turns his attention to the firing competition. How's it going so far? He asked his son, Tazakai. How do you think it's going? I'm whooping his little ass. It's not fair, Acquaseas complained. Look at that carbine. It's bigger than him. That's because he's not holding his mouth right, Pops jokingly added. Diggy, what did I tell you about your feet positioning? I told you 1,000 times about body balance. It's like the more I teach you, the dumber I get. Just then, Fox Hoy, younger brother of the JDH senior strategist, Chucky Hoy, entered the firing range and handed Acquaseas a dossier. She glanced over it once and handed him what was obviously an envelope of cash. What kind of cloak and dagger Javhan Wink's shit is this? Getofinger asked pointedly. Pop sort of cringed at the mention of Javhan Winks. I hired CCI to do some intel work for me on the Elaine Dwee ad situation. She replied casually, You don't ever have the fox follow me around, do you? Getofinger asked, You're right, Pops. The empty wagon does make the most noise, she said, waving off her husband. She looked over the dossier. After a while, she muttered to herself, I knew there was some sort of political angle to this. What you got? Pops asked curiously. Acquaseas held up a photographic image of what appeared to be Port-Doe Province Azurite Senator Landon P. Tiberius, sitting in a vehicle with 219th operative. Dale Winheed, don't you think it's ironic that these two, who have no humanly business being around each other, are close enough to be photographed together around the time of Elaine Dwee ad being detained for deportation by the Azurites? She does have a valid point, Diggy observed. Stay out of JDH business, you little turd warden. Tazakai jokingly added, 2 Wyclin ago, Elaine Dwee ad released a documentary on under the table pay called The Underground Madness of Labor. Acquaseas continued, it was Senator Landon P. Tiberius that went on an immediate media blitzkrieg, labeling her a stoner, introducing legislation in Alphasan about illicit viewing material. It was shortly after that that she started doing investigative journalism on local politicians. Look at this. She was in the process of releasing a documentary, Aliens, Weed Heads, and Local Politics. She's not a rebel rouser. She's a whistleblower. Pops, with your permission, I'd like to set up some surveillance on the 219th. I doubt they filed the proper paperwork for her deportation anyway. They just want to stop the release of this video. I'll tell you what, Quetta, Pops replied. I'll let you do this. If you can get it done by the weekend and cook me some steaks for my barbecue I've got coming up, as well as some of those cookies you prepared for the wedding reception, consider it done, she said. Acquaseas went to work immediately, setting up intelligence operations on the 219th. With the weekend quickly approaching, she decided to up things up a notch. She targeted 219th strategist Tanya D. Roish for extraction and interrogation. The JDH interrogation room was sparse and clinical, designed to be psychologically unsettling without being overtly threatening. Darkened walls with a 2-way mirror in the center. At the opposite side of the mirror, Getofinger set an observation accompanied by his cousin, Lieutenant Doug Rand. Has she ever done this kind of thing before, Ghetto? Nigga, please. How do you think she gets me to go to F.A. Coney at 2 o'clock in the morning to get her a damn milkshake? But she seemed so quiet. Doug replied, "Watch the master at work." Getofinger answered, "Tanya D." Roish sat restrained in a metal chair, her 219th uniform rumpled and torn from the extraction operation. She glared at Acquaseas with the defiant look of someone who had been trained to resist interrogation. Tanya D. Roish, Acquaseas began consulting a file, 219th Azurite Division strategist, specializing in prisoner transport logistics. Impressive record, 15 Weichland of service, multiple commendations for operational security. Tanya remained silent, her jaw set in determination. "I'm going to make this simple," Acquaseas continued, pulling up a chair across from her prisoner. "I need information about the transport arrangements for Elaine Dwead. Route, timing, security detail, vehicle specifications, standard prisoner transport intel." "Go fuck yourself," Tanya replied flatly. Acquaseas sighed. "I was hoping we could do this the civilized way." She stood up and walked behind Tanya's chair. "You know, in my experience, the tough ones usually break the fastest. All that bravado is just covering up fear. You don't know shit about me, Jasper, bitch." The slap came fast and sharp, snapping Tanya's head to the side. When she turned back, there was blood at the corner of her mouth, but her eyes burned with even more defiance. On the other side of the two-way mirror, Doug glanced at his cousin and said, "I got a stiffy right now. You think I'm gonna go to hell for that?" Getofinger popped him upside the back of the head. "Ow, motherfucker. I was talking about Tanya, not your wife." "Transport details," Acquaseas repeated. Another period of silence. Another slap, harder this time. "You can do this all day," Tanya spat. "Physical pain is temporary. Betraying my unit is permanent." Acquaseas studied her prisoner for a long moment, then nodded with what almost looked like respect. "You know what, Tanya? You're right. Physical interrogation is crude and unreliable. Let me try a different approach." She walked to the intercom on the wall and pressed the button. "Mazikor, can you come down to interrogation room 3 and bring your audio equipment, the heavy-duty speakers?" "Oh shit," Getofinger announced. "What's about to happen?" Doug Rand asked. "My wife specializes in, let's say, acoustic warfare. If she doesn't get her way, she turns up the stereo in the apartment, loud as hell, which forces me to leave. This poor bitch has nowhere to go. She's done for." "That's a seasoned Azurite soldier," Doug replied. "You think she can't handle a little music? It's not the music, it's what she's about to play. I bet you $100 she pops in that Kiss CD and put Hooligan on repeat." 20 minutes later, Mazikor Rand wheeled in a cart loaded with professional-grade sound equipment. Massive speakers were positioned around the room, connected to a control system that could regulate volume, frequency, and duration. "What's your favorite music genre, Tanya?" Acquaseas asked conversationally. "What?" "Just curious. Rock, pop, classical? I'm just trying to figure out what grooves you. What can put you in a conversational mood?" Behind the two-way glass, Doug said to his cousin she's going to melt her icy heart with a cool island song. Getofinger retorted, "No, she's going to cool her icy heart with a warm island song." Doug Rand said in finality, "How about she warms her hot heart with a fresh island song?" Neither interrogator nor interrogatee were privy to the laughter going on the other side of the mirror. Tanya's eyes widened slightly as she began to understand what was happening. "Mazikor, what do you think? Something with a lot of repetitive elements, high energy, maybe some screaming vocals?" "I've got just the thing," Mazikor replied, loading something into the system. "This should do the trick." "Oh shit, she's letting Maz DJ this party of pain. He's probably got the Onyx CD." Getofinger said to Doug, "You owe me $100 then, motherfucker. You didn't shake on it, man." Getofinger replied, grinning. The first blast of sound nearly knocked Tanya out of her chair. Hard rock music filled the room at a volume that made conversation impossible, the bass frequencies vibrating through the floor and walls. Acquaseas gave Tanya a mock salute and left the room with Mazikor. For the first hour, Tanya tried to maintain her defiance, gritting her teeth against the assault on her senses. By the second hour, she was trying to cover her ears despite her restraints. By the third hour, she was screaming for it to stop, but the soundproof room contained her cries. When Acquaseas finally returned and shut off the music, the silence was almost as shocking as the noise had been. "Transport details," she said simply. Tanya's resistance had crumbled. Her voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. 3-vehicle convoy, armored transport in the middle. Route 94 to Metropolitan Airport. Departure scheduled for 0800 tomorrow. "I'm going to need you to write all of this down," Acquaseas said, placing a pen and paper in front of her. "Every detail you can remember. Routes, backup plans, security protocols, timing, personnel assignments, everything." Tanya's hands shook as she began to write, filling page after page with operational details that had taken weeks to plan and coordinate. When she finished, Acquaseas reviewed the documents carefully. "This is good work, Tanya. Very thorough. You should know that we're not planning to stop the deportation permanently, just delay it long enough for that documentary to be released. Sometimes the truth needs a little help finding its way to the public." Tanya looked up with exhausted confusion. "You're not trying to free her?" "Freedom comes in many forms," Acquaseas replied. "Sometimes it's about escaping detention. Sometimes it's about ensuring the right story gets told before someone tries to silence it forever." As Acquaseas left the interrogation room with Tanya's confession in hand, she was already planning the operation that would give Elaine Dwead's documentary the time it needed to reach the world. This mission will come to a conclusion in time for the weekend barbecue, but for now there was work to be done. Chapter 6, Quiet Liberation. Not only was Quetta Acquaseas Rand a highly skilled operative of the JDH who was moving up in the ranks rapidly, growth came naturally due to her lineage as a 100 prime. She was also a member of the Lewis family, owners of the prestigious law firm Lewis Law in Port-Doe Province, city of McFarland. She was also studying law at Madonna in the state of Wayne. She helped out Pops with some small legal issues shortly after joining the JDH in early 2000. It saved the company a lot of grief and got her good favor with the upper brass. She immediately got to work drafting the proper documents to file with the Port-Doe Immigration Authority office on behalf of Elaine Dwead. She emailed the document to her sister, Quetta QG Lewis, in the city of McFarland to have her file the proper documents, giving the JDH a legal buffer to move forward in their operation. QG was younger than Acquaseas. She served shortly on the McFarland Police Department before she was let go for drinking on duty. QG herself was an A100, but she did not carry the prime gene like Acquaseas. She might serve better with the JDH than she did with McFarland PD, but that thought is for another time. There's an extraction mission on hand to prepare. Hank Voss Jr. was insistent on taking over the operation himself, but he was overruled by Pops. "If my son has faith in her, so do I," he told the lieutenant. Getofinger was more aware of his wife's capabilities than others at Javhan Dominion Holdings. Acquaseas played a key part in the defeat of Varnul Mutum of the 219th Wyclinago. Since then, she has grown in experience and rank, and he was proud of the fact that she was about to prove to the brass her value to the company in her first role as a field commander. Dale Winheed had a lot to ponder in the lead vehicle of the convoy carrying Elaine Dwead to the Port-Doe Aviation Authority for deportation back to Britannia. The benefactor of his mission, Landon P. Tiberius, had a lot riding on this. His re-election as a province senator was pending. If she had the opportunity to release her next documentary, the chances of him winning the Azurite seat would be slim to none. His mind was also orbited with thoughts of Tanya D. Rowish, the 219th strategist, who was supposed to be here in the lead convoy with him for this mission. He had no doubt in his mind that someone in Jasper had found her, though he was not sure who. He heard a crackle on the radio before the voice of Felix Burnham said, coming up on the French Road exit, all eyes out, from the armored vehicle carrying their prisoner Elaine Dwead. The sun, cast long shadows across the French Road overpass as the three-vehicle 219th convoy approached the critical junction. Dale Winheed adjusted his rearview mirror for the third time in as many minutes, his instincts warning him that something wasn't right. The absence of Tanya D. Roish gnawed at him. Her strategic mind had been crucial in planning this route, and without her oversight, he felt exposed. "Command, this is Transport 1, he radioed. "Approaching Checkpoint Alpha. All clear so far, but maintaining high alert." Felix Burnham's voice crackled back from the armored transport vehicle. "Copy that, Transport 1. Our package is secure and ready for delivery. ETA to Bordeaux Aviation Authority remains 45 minutes. What Dale couldn't see was the carefully orchestrated chaos about to unfold. 3 blocks ahead, a JDH surveillance team had positioned themselves with precision that would have impressed even Tanya D. Roish. Acquaseas had studied the intelligence extracted from the 219th strategist down to the minute details, backup routes, communication protocols, even the personal habits of individual operatives. The first sign of trouble came when Dale's radio suddenly filled with static, then went completely dead. He reached for his backup communicator, but that too had been rendered useless by Mazakor's electromagnetic pulse device, deployed remotely from his position 2 miles away. "What the hell?" Dale started, but his words were cut short as the road ahead erupted in a controlled demolition that sent chunks of asphalt flying. Not enough to seriously injure anyone, but sufficient to bring the convoy to a complete stop. Through the smoke and debris, figures in JDH tactical gear emerged with military precision. Acquaseas led the assault, her A-100 prime abilities allowing her to move with inhuman speed and coordination. Behind her, a carefully selected extraction team advanced with the kind of disciplined efficiency that had made JDH legendary throughout Bordeaux province. Dale reached for his sidearm, but found himself staring down the barrel of Acquaseas' rifle before he could draw. "Dale Winheed," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone completely in control of the situation. 219th operative, 15 Wyclin of service, 3 commendations for prisoner transport security. Today's not going to be one of those commendations. In the armored vehicle, Felix Burnham was coordinating a desperate defense, but the JDH team had anticipated every possible response. Flashbang grenades disabled the remaining guards, while specialized cutting tools made short work of the vehicle's reinforced locks. When the smoke cleared, Elaine Dwead found herself face to face with a woman who radiated quiet competence. Acquaseas knelt beside the filmmaker, who sat shackled in the back of the transport vehicle, looking more annoyed than frightened. "Miss Ad," Acquaseas said, producing a key for the handcuffs, "I'm Quetta Acquaseas Rand, Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. We're here to give you some extra time." As the restraints fell away, Elaine rubbed her wrists and looked at her unexpected rescuer. "Let me guess, another private military company with their own agenda?" "Something like that," Acquaseas replied, producing an electronic ankle monitor from her tactical pack. "But our agenda happens to align with yours, at least for the moment." She secured the device around Elaine's ankle with practiced efficiency, then helped the filmmaker to her feet. The ankle monitor was sleek, designed to be unobtrusive while still maintaining constant surveillance capability. Under the authority of the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation, Acquaseas announced formally, "You are now a supervised detainee. You are not under arrest, and you will not be deported back to Britannia today. I will allow you to continue to enjoy the freedom of the nation of Magni Maris 5 for a little while longer." She paused, meeting Elaine's eyes directly. "Hopefully, you can take care of your issues with the immigration authority here in the province and release your next documentary film." The wink that accompanied the mention of the documentary was subtle but unmistakable. Elaine's expression shifted from wariness to understanding. "So this is about the Senator Tiberius piece. I have the authority to put agents on you, to watch your every move," Acquaseas continued, "but I won't do so. We know every move that you make anyway. If you attempt to tamper with this ankle monitor, We will be at your door before you can light up your next joint." A slight smile played at the corners of Elaine's mouth. The reputation of JDH intelligence gathering was apparently well deserved. "I want you to do me two favors," Acquaseas said, her tone becoming more personal. "Number one, get that damn movie out. Number two, either take care of your paperwork with the immigration authority or get back to Britannia. Please remember that you are a guest here in the nation of Magni Maris 5. If you wish to become a citizen here, please go through the proper channels to do so." Elaine nodded slowly. "And if I refuse? Then in 72 hours, you'll find yourself back in 219th custody. And this time, there won't be any extraction teams coming to interrupt your deportation." Acquaseas' voice carried absolute certainty. "But something tells me that won't be necessary." As the JDH team prepared to withdraw, leaving Del Winheed and his surviving operatives to explain their failure to Senator Tiberius, Acquaseas felt the satisfaction of a mission completed with textbook precision. No unnecessary casualties, objective achieved, and plenty of time to get back to Finkel Acres for Pops' barbecue. The extraction had been so smooth, so professionally executed, that by the time 219th reinforcements arrived at the scene, there was nothing left but tire tracks and the lingering smell of smoke. 2 days later, Petoskey Park, adjacent to the JDH headquarters in Finkel Acres, was alive with the sounds and smells of a celebration. Pops enjoyed his little get-togethers, where he would invite fellow veterans of the Kalamazoo conflict, Curtis Shepard, James Howe, and Llewellyn. Amongst these Kalamazoo conflict veterans was Phil Flint, owner of Elixara Corp. Inc., and silent partner of the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation, being one of the A100 prime signatures on the company's articles of incorporation. Not to mention, proud father of JDH operatives, Lieutenant Al Flint, along with Al's younger brother, Falcon, who stood in front of his specialized grill, masterfully roasting a pig. Acquaseas, as promised to Pops, had her steaks on a separate grill right next to Falcon's, with the same attention to detail she brought to military operations. The aroma of perfectly seasoned meat mixed with the laughter of JDH operatives and their families. A massive screen had been erected between two oak trees, connected to a high-end projector system that Mazikor had somehow acquired through channels better left unexamined. On the screen, the opening credits of Aliens, Weedheads, and Local Politics were rolling, accompanied by cheers from the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pops announced, raising his beer high above his head, "I want everyone to take a moment to appreciate how quietly this entire operation was handled. No international incidents, no messy political fallout, no unnecessary casualties, just clean, professional execution." He turned toward Acquaseas, who was arranging her promised cookies on a serving table while Getofinger helped distribute paper plates. "And I want to especially recognize our newest field commander, who completed her first major operation right on schedule and under budget. That's the kind of leadership this organization was built on." The crowd erupted in applause as the documentary's first scene began to play. On screen, Elaine Dwead's voice provided narration over images of Senator Tiberius meeting with various business leaders and 219th operatives. The truth about political corruption in Port-Doe province runs deeper than most citizens realize. Elaine's voice carried across the park. Through careful investigation and hidden camera work, this documentary will expose the network of relationships that threatens the democratic process in this region. Hank Voss Jr. raised his own beer. Here's to giving the people what they need to hear, exactly when they need to hear it. As the barbecue continued and the documentary played on, Acquaseas allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The mission had been more than successful. It had been elegant. Senator Tiberius would face the voters with his dirty laundry aired in high definition. Elaine Dwead would have the time she needed to properly resolve her immigration status, and JDH had demonstrated once again that sometimes the most effective action was the most subtle. Getofinger appeared beside her with 2 plates loaded with perfectly grilled potatoes and steak and her famous cookies. So my beloved sugar tits, how does it feel to be a field commander? She looked around at the celebration, at the documentary exposing corruption playing on the big screen, at the community of warriors and their families sharing food and stories under the evening sky. Quiet, she said with a smile, exactly the way the best operations should be. As the sun set over Finkel Acres and the documentary continued to reveal the truth about political machinations in Port-Doe province, the JDH had once again proven that sometimes the most powerful victories were the ones that whispered rather than shouted. In a world full of noise and chaos, there was still profound strength in knowing exactly when and how to be lethal and quiet.